He bought a ranch for just $1. Then discovered the girl living there. New Mexico Territory, 1893. Wind combed the plains with a dry, cutting breath. Jed McAllister dismounted at the gate of Sunrise Hill, a crooked ranch sun-bleached and silent. It had cost him $1, a deal signed in a dusty office 2 towns back. Place to grow old, alone. But the moment he stepped through the warped oak door of the main house, he froze. Upstairs, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Hiding. Jed's hand went to his revolver. Then she appeared, barefoot, shotgun in her arms. Hair tangled, dress torn. Sunburn seared her cheek, but her eyes were steady. "You must be the new owner," she said calmly. "I'm Clara Rowe. I live here." Jed McAllister hadn't always sought silence. There was a time he rode with the cavalry. Dust in his teeth, saber in his hand, the whistle of death in his ears. He'd seen men broken under cannon fire, seen towns disappear in smoke, seen boys younger than himself turn to ash by morning. He had survived Antietam, survived Shiloh, survived the war they said would make men heroes. All it made Jed was hollow. After the surrender, he didn't return to anything. No wife waited. No farm stood waiting to be reclaimed. His parents had died of fever, and his brother, shot by raiders for defending a sack of corn, was buried in a ditch behind a church no one visited anymore. So Jed wandered. He mended fences, dug wells, watched prairie dogs, and kept his words few. Some towns he stayed a week, others a single night. He carried a Bible with half the pages torn out and a journal he never wrote in. The only things that stayed with him were his rifle, his mare, and the scar across his chest from a bayonet at Cold Harbor. The war had made him useful but never whole, and he didn't want whole anymore. He wanted peace, silence, a place where no one asked questions, and the ghosts of war could blow past him like tumbleweeds. Sunrise Hill seemed perfect for that. The papers were signed, the land cheap because no one wanted it. Just weeds, dry wells, a windmill that moaned in the wind. It was the sort of place a man could die in quietly, without anyone taking much notice. That's all Jed wanted. Quiet end. But standing in the doorway of that house, staring into the barrel of a young woman's shotgun, he knew peace wasn't waiting for him here. It never had been. Clara Rowe didn't lower the shotgun. Jed didn't blame her. He was a stranger. She looked like someone who hadn't trusted anyone in a long time. She was maybe 20. Dirt streaked her legs where the hem of her dress had torn away. Her collarbone jutted sharp beneath sun-reddened skin. But it was her eyes that caught him, brown, steady, too calm for her age. The look of someone who had seen more than she should and survived it. Jed stepped back, just enough to show his hands. "I bought this land," he said. "Deeds in my saddlebag." "You bought it from Randall Cobb?" "Signed the paper myself." She hesitated. "That paper's worthless." Jed said nothing. He'd suspected as much when Cobb's price came without argument. $1 for 30 acres and a house still standing, if barely. Men don't give things away unless there's blood tied to them. Clara shifted, lowering the shotgun slightly. "Come in if you want. But keep your hands where I can see them." Jed stepped inside. The floorboards creaked beneath his boots. Dust hung thick in the air, and the place smelled of damp wood, rust, and something sweet, like sage or lavender. She led him to the kitchen, where a cracked window let in light. A pot of water steamed over a cookstove. A second plate already sat on the table. "You were expecting someone?" Jed asked. "No," she said. "I just cook for 2. Habit, I guess." They sat without speaking for a while. Clara ate slowly, as if conserving energy. Jed didn't touch his food. When the silence stretched too long, she looked at him and said simply, "I've been hiding here 3 years." Jed didn't ask why. He waited. "My father owned this ranch. Used to raise goats, sell pelts in town. We were poor, but it was honest. Then he went up to the mountains chasing gold. Him and 6 other men. There was a collapse. Only one came back." She looked away. "They said it was an accident, but my father had sent a letter 2 days before. Said he'd found something, real gold. Maps, He was afraid someone was watching him. Then he dies, and that man, the one survivor, comes back with a different story. Jed didn't move. He'd seen this sort of story unfold before. A man finds something valuable, dies suddenly, and the survivors all walk away richer. I was 15, didn't know much, but I knew enough to get out when I saw that same man. Thomas Rudd, trying to convince the town judge my father never owned the land. She stood up, crossed to a cabinet, and pulled out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. From it, she unfolded a yellowing piece of paper, handwriting scrawled and faded, a crude map drawn along the margins. "This is his," she said, "the original deed. And the map. They thought he buried it with the bodies, but I found it in the attic, hidden in a hollow beam." Jed studied the paper. The script was shaky but clear enough. The seal of the New Mexico Land Office marked the bottom. "They forged papers, used a dead man's name to steal the land out from under me," Clara said. "And when I refused to sign it over, they came looking." "Who's they?" "Thomas Rudd, Silas Granger, and the Harknell brothers." "You've heard of them?" Jed had. The Harknells controlled half the county, cattlemen with hands soaked in other men's blood. They didn't take things by force. They used lawyers, judges, and when that failed, fire. "They killed your father for gold?" "They killed him for being in the way. The gold's still up there. But without this," she pointed at the map, "they've been digging blind." Jed sat back. The land he'd bought was a powder keg. Clara wasn't a squatter. She was the last thread of a claim that powerful men wanted buried. "You've been alone all this time?" She nodded. "Sometimes I'd ride to the next town, sell herbs. Other times I stayed put. They don't know I'm still alive. Or maybe they do. But they don't know what I have." Jed tapped the map lightly. "They'll come eventually. They already have. I saw riders 2 nights ago. They stopped at the creek. Watched the house from the ridge." Jed looked at her, really looked this time. She didn't just need shelter. She needed protection. And she needed it now. He stood, adjusted his belt. "You have a rifle?" "2. And a pistol. My father taught me to shoot." He nodded. "Then let's start with the windows. Tonight we board them. Tomorrow we check the fences. After that we decide whether to run or stand." Clara didn't ask why he was helping. Maybe she saw something in his eyes too. Maybe she understood that men like Jed didn't come here looking to live. They came to stop running. She handed him a hammer. And just like that, the war began. They spent the day fortifying the house. Jed nailed planks over the ground floor windows, checked every door hinge, tested the locks. He cleaned both shotguns, then taught Clara how to brace a rifle on the windowsill to steady her aim. She learned fast. Her father had trained her well, but Jed added the cold precision of battlefield experience. Outside, the wind never stopped. It whistled through the brittle trees, curled through the cracks in the fence line, tugged at the hem of Clara's dress like it wanted to take her too. As dusk fell, she stood in the barn doorway, watching the horizon. "They'll come at night," she said. "Always do." Jed nodded. "You could still leave," she added. "You've got no stake in this." "I signed the papers," he said. "Makes it mine now too." She looked at him. "You know what they do to men who get in their way? I've seen worse." And he had. In the war, he'd once held a friend's hand while his lungs filled with blood. After that, no man's cruelty surprised him. Clara turned back to the hills. "They'll send someone first. Not the Harknells, not yet. They never show their faces unless they're sure." Right on cue, a shadow crested the ridge. A rider silhouetted against the twilight. Jed stepped down from the porch and waited. The man approached with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Broad-chested, long coat, boots that gleamed with polish. His rifle sat across his saddle like an afterthought. He didn't need to draw it. His name was enough. "Evening," he called out. Jed said nothing. The rider reined in and smiled like a man about to win a bet. "Name's Silas Granger. I expect you've heard of me." Jed let that sit. "I ride for the Harknells. They own most of what you see around here. And the land you're standing on, well, there's been some confusion about ownership. No confusion on my end, Jed said. Paperwork's clean. Granger chuckled. That's one way to see it. But I'll be plain. That house behind you? It don't belong to you. Never did. Jed cocked his head. Then why'd Cobb sell it to me? Because he's a fool. Or he thought you'd be gone before anyone noticed. Jed said nothing. Granger leaned forward in his saddle. I'm here out of courtesy. Ain't my style to shoot a man without giving him a chance to walk. You ride out now, no harm done. But if you stay, well. He looked up at the house. Sunrise Hills burned before. Jed's hand hovered near his hip, but he didn't draw. Not yet. Is that it? He asked. Granger smirked. We'll be back tonight. You better not be here. He turned his horse and rode off, the sound of hooves fading into the wind. Jed didn't move until he was sure the man was gone. Clara stepped onto the porch. That was Silas? He nodded. He's not bluffing, she said quietly. He'll bring others. Jed walked past her into the house. In the back room, he took down the rifle he'd kept wrapped in oilcloth since Tennessee. A Springfield .58 muzzleloader. Heavy, accurate, unforgiving. He loaded it by habit, hand steady. Then he turned to Clara. You've been hiding long enough. She didn't argue. Just picked up the pistol her father had given her and checked the cylinder. They spent the next hour setting up firing positions, windows, the front porch, the narrow staircase. At one point, Jed stopped beside the hearth. I ain't doing this for gold, he said. I know. I ain't doing it for the land either. I know that too. He looked at her, really looked. Then why do you think I'm doing it? Clara didn't answer at first. Then she said softly, because you're tired of running. Jed looked down at his hands. Scarred, nodded, still steady after all these years. Yeah, he said. Maybe I am. Outside, the sun vanished behind the hills. The wind died, and the silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Clara lit one lamp and set it in the center of the kitchen table. A beacon, she said. So they know we're not afraid. Jed smiled faintly. You're braver than most men I've met. No, she said. Just too angry to run. The moon rose. Still no riders. Jed dozed by the front window, rifle across his lap. Just after midnight, Clara shook him awake. Look, she whispered. He followed her gaze to the ridge. Torches. 3 at first, then 5, then more. They came slowly, fanned out in a line. At least a dozen, maybe more. Mounted men. Some in long coats. Others in deputy badges. Jed even saw a preacher among them. These aren't just thugs, he murmured. They brought half the county. They'll bury the truth, Clara said. They'll call me a squatter, say I forged the deed. No one'll argue. The Harknells own the judge, the banker, even the preacher. Jed swallowed hard. The odds were turning. Fast. They want me to run, he said. But you're not going to. He looked at her, saw her hands trembling, her jaw tight with fear she refused to let rule her. No, he said. Not tonight. Then, just as the first rider stepped forward, a new sound echoed across the plain. Riders. From the east. Not torches this time, lanterns. And tin stars. Sheriff Amos Keene rode at the head, his long coat flapping behind him. An old man, but the kind who'd never surrendered a fight he believed in. He dismounted at the porch. Jed McAllister? He asked. That's me. You wrote me. Sent the deed. The map. The letters Clara found. Jed nodded. Sheriff Keene turned to Clara. Miss Rowe, I remember your father. Honest man. Hard worker. He deserved better. He pulled a sheaf of papers from his saddlebag. Telegrams. Legal orders. Witness statements. Enough to make the judge squirm and the Harknells think twice. He looked out at the torches lining the hill. Time these bastards answer for what they've done. Then he turned back to Jed. You ready to make a stand? Jed looked past him at Clara, at the house, at the empty plains and the memory of every place he'd fled from. Yes, he said. For once, I am. The torches crept closer. A slow, tightening arc of fire across the ridge, moving like jaws around Sunrise Hill. Jed counted 15 riders, then 20, more appearing with each minute. "They're not backing down," he said. Sheriff Keene adjusted his spectacles, squinting into the dark. "No, they won't. Not until they're made to." Behind him, for deputies dismounted, older men with grizzled faces and steady hands. Not all of them wore badges, but Jed could tell by the way they moved that they weren't strangers to gunfire. One of them, a thin man with a limp, touched the brim of his hat. "Name's Albert Finch. Used to ride for Keene when he was marshal down in Santa Cruz. Heard the row name and figured I'd come see what kind of war we were walking into." Another, shorter and barrel-chested, added, "We've seen what the Harknells do. Burned my cousin's ranch last year, called it a brush fire. No one asked questions. Judge claimed it was natural cause. I've been waiting for this fight." Clara stood just inside the doorway, a shotgun clutched tight to her chest. Her eyes flicked between the sheriff's men and the torches above. "They'll try to burn us out," she said. "They always do." Keene nodded. "Let him try. We've got legal ground now. They make a move, they hang for it." Jed didn't answer. He was watching the way the line on the ridge formed. Not just a mob, but a strategy, staggered riders, high ground, spaced with precision. Not random thugs. "Someone trained them," he murmured. Keene heard him. "Silas Granger. He fought in Missouri Confederate cavalry. Knows how to push a siege." Jed's face hardened. "Then he'll push hard. And fast." A shot rang out from the ridge. A warning. Keene stepped onto the porch and raised his voice. "This is legal land. I've got deeds, statements, and federal authority to arrest any man who crosses that fence with intent to harm." Laughter echoed back. Then a voice, too smooth to be anything but trouble. "Silas Granger. That's a fine speech, Sheriff. But out here, papers don't stop bullets." The torchlight flickered behind him, casting long shadows across the grass. Jed watched as more figures emerged. Men with badges, some with preacher collars, others in bankers' coats. "This isn't just a gang," he said under his breath. "It's the whole damn power structure." Clara's hands trembled on the shotgun. "They own everything, even the church." Jed didn't correct her. He just touched her elbow gently and said, "But not the truth." Inside the house they prepared. The sheriff's men took up positions. 2 by the front windows, 1 at the rear. Clara moved to the attic, where a narrow window gave her a clear shot over the pasture. Jed stayed near the door. The night grew quiet, too quiet. Even the wind held its breath. Then came the signal. 3 torches flared red. Jed's heart clenched. He raised his rifle. The first shots came from the east, quick, sharp bursts that pinged off the shutters. Then came shouts, orders barked in unison. The Harknells were staging a pincer. 2 flanks, 1 central push. Classic cavalry maneuver. But this wasn't a battlefield. It was a home. And they weren't fighting soldiers. They were fighting a man with nothing to lose, and a girl who had already lost everything. Keene shouted, "Hold fire till they cross the fence." They waited. The hoofbeats came closer. Jed's breath slowed. Then a crash. The barn. Flames leapt high. The Harknells had torched it as distraction. Smoke billowed, and with it chaos. Jed ran to the side window. For riders, fast. Heading for the back door. "Take M." Keene barked. Gunfire exploded from the rear of the house. Jed fired once, striking a rider clean in the chest. Another fell from Finch's shotgun blast. But the others dismounted and scrambled for cover. Jed ducked as bullets punched through the wall beside him. He rolled to the fireplace, reloaded. Clara fired from above. A scream followed. Keene's men held steady, but the attackers kept pressing. The torchlight shifted. Smoke from the barn choked the yard. Visibility was dropping fast. "We need water," someone yelled. "No time," Jed shouted. "Hold the line." More gunfire. More shouting. Then another sound. Horses. From the south. Jed's stomach dropped. Reinforcements. But when the new riders came into view, He saw silver glinting in their hands. Badges. Not Harknell men. More deputies. Keen's voice rang out, full of fire. Now! The new arrivals fired into the flank of the attackers. Caught between two fronts, the Harknell men faltered. Granger shouted, "Pull back! Regroup!" But it was too late. Half his men were down. The rest scattered. Smoke still curled through the air. The barn was lost. But the house still stood. In the silence that followed, Keen stepped forward, mud on his boots, rifle slung across his back. "They'll be back," he said. Jed nodded. "They'll bring lawyers next. Let 'em. This time we've got evidence. Deeds. Maps. Witnesses." He looked at Clara, who stepped down from the attic, her cheeks blackened with soot, hands shaking slightly. "You did good," he told her. She didn't reply, just looked out at the ridge, where the last of the torches faded into the night. "They'll come again," she whispered. "Let them," Jed said. "Next time we won't be alone." And in that moment they all understood something deeper. This wasn't a fight over gold. It was a fight for the soul of the land, for truth, for justice, for a home no one could steal again. Dawn came red and raw, like an open wound across the sky. The smoke from the barn still drifted over the fields, trailing into the hills like a signal to whatever evil might still be watching. But Sunrise Hill stood unbroken, blackened, bruised, but standing. Clara sat at the table, her father's papers spread out before her. Maps, deeds, and letters written in a shaky hand. Jed poured coffee into 2 tin mugs, then stood at the window, watching dust rise in the distance. "They're coming back," he said. Clara didn't ask who. Moments later, the riders arrived. Silas Granger led the way, his coat torn, face scraped from the night before. Behind him were 3 lawyers, 1 banker, and a tall man with a silver badge that gleamed too much to be honest. They didn't come with torches this time. They came with documents. Sheriff Keen met them at the fence, his men posted behind him, rifles resting but ready. "You can't stop this," Granger sneered. "We've got injunctions, court orders signed and stamped." Keen didn't move. "And I've got federal land records and affidavits. You want to argue law? Let's do it in front of a judge who ain't in your pocket." One of the lawyers stepped forward, waving a thick packet. "These men are trespassing," he said. "That house belongs to the Harknell Land and Mineral Trust. We have proof." Clara walked out from the porch, holding the oilcloth bundle close to her chest. "You want proof?" she asked, her voice even. She stepped into the open, unwrapping the bundle in front of them. Inside were 2 sheets, her father's original land deed, dated and notarized, and a second page, the hand-drawn map of the gold vein, marked with his initials and seal. "And these," she pulled free another folder, "are the forged documents, the ones you used to steal what you couldn't earn." Silas didn't blink, but the banker behind him paled. "Lies," the lawyer spat, "circumstantial at best." "Then why did your men try to kill us last night?" Keen snapped. "Why burn a barn if the law's on your side?" Granger's hand twitched toward his holster. The sheriff didn't wait. His revolver barked once. Silas staggered back, dropped to his knees, and fell face first in the dust. No one else reached for their weapon. The lawyers froze. The banker swallowed hard. Clara stepped beside the sheriff, her hands shaking only a little. "We have names, witnesses, and a deputy marshal arriving by week's end," Keen said. "You want to keep pushing, go ahead. But from here on, everything that happens will be written down and judged in court." The silence that followed felt like thunder held in the throat of the land. Then, slowly, the men turned their horses and rode away. No one looked back. Sheriff Keen exhaled. "It's over." Clara clutched the papers to her chest. "Not yet, but soon." Jed stood beside her, watching the horizon clear. No more war drums, no more fire, only wind, and the long quiet that comes after the storm. By morning, the land lay still. The fires had burned out, leaving behind only smoke and blackened wood. The barn was gone. A dozen shell casings glittered in the dust. But the house remained. So did the people in it. The sheriff and his men packed up at dawn. Before he left, Keene shook Jed's hand with a firmness that meant something. Then he tipped his hat to Clara. "You've got something worth more than gold here," he said. She nodded. "I know." Once they were alone again, Jed and Clara sat on the porch steps in silence. The papers were safe. The land was hers now, by law, by blood, by fire. There'd be more letters to write, more judges to face, but the worst had passed. Jed rubbed his hands together, calloused and scarred. The rifle leaned against the porch rail, still clean. "You're a wealthy woman now," he said, half smiling. Clara looked tired, but free. "And you're still a poor man," she replied. "But I've got an extra chair by the fire." Jed chuckled softly, nodding once. "Partners." She looked at him, full of something new. Not victory, not relief, something gentler. "Partners," she said. The sun rose over Sunrise Hill, touching the land with gold no map could chart. And together, they walked back inside the old house. Two souls who had stood their ground and earned something stronger than gold or silence. Place to belong. Place to begin again.